My mother was forever pregnant. There were 7 of us. We were all born in New Zealand. 8 children, counting the one that died in China. She lost 3 children, 2 stillbirths and 1 miscarriage.
我姓歐，我叫做蔡平。我係喺新加坡出生嘅。我12歲咧，我父母就帶翻我翻去鄉下番禺瘦狗嶺。
My mother's real given name was Choi, but she liked to be called Mary. She liked Mary because Mary was the mother of Jesus. I'm Lorna Wong. I was born Lorna Nan in Wellington. I was born in 1944. My mother, she was adopted as a baby, and I presume she was one of these unwanted girls. She was adopted by this elderly couple who had a rubber plantation in Singapore. But when she was nearing about 11 or 12, they moved back to China, and my mother really hated it in China. They went back to their old village, which was near Bak Wan San. Bak Wan San, translated, means White Cloud Mountain. My mother was told she was not allowed to go to Bak Wan San because evidently there were tigers there, so it was a very dangerous place. Her mother was sick, so they decided that my mother should get married. They found my father, who was looking for a wife at that stage because his second wife had run away. And my mother said, "Oh, I don't want him, he's too old." She was only 14 at that stage, and he must have been about 40 or so. To her, he was a real old man. Her parents were quite desperate at that stage, and so they persuaded her to marry him. They said, "Oh, he's a rich man. He's from Gamsan, which is Gold Mountain, New Zealand. So you will have a good life there."
我14歲就結婚啦，做我丈夫第3個妻子。大媽咧就已經有仔女㗎啦，3個大女咧已經結咗婚咯。姨媽咧當時就離家出走喎，剩低咗2個仔，一個3歲，另外一個得6歲咋。係我大媽個主意叫我丈夫娶我嘅，因為我年輕啊嘛，可以幫手照顧小朋友，做家務，做菜園工作，又照顧家婆同我大媽。哦，嗰時啲生活真係〜好辛苦啊。
She had a very difficult time after she got married. It was actually Daima's idea for my father to have another wife to help look after the children. Well, while looking after the children, she had to work in the fields, picking, I presume it was rice or something like that. So she always had someone on her back on a mare day, they call it.
喺1938年，日本仔侵佔中國，就喺呢時，我生咗個仔，我等我丈夫翻嚟幫佢改名。我仔嗰時冇名嘅，佢就病咗。當時好難揾藥醫啊！我家婆叫我去啲廟堂度求神拜佛，保佑。40日後就死咗啦。
The baby died. It wasn't even named, so that made her turn toward the Christianity even more.
Just thinking about, Nana as a young girl, 14, a 14-year-old being married to this guy and having a baby and then losing it with the Japanese invading would have been just super scary. I just can't imagine what it would be like.
當時啊，好多人都想逃走啊，離開打仗嘅地方。但係我家婆想留喺鄉下喎，大媽應該死咗噶啦。後來我聽到日本兵食咗我大媽最中意嗰隻睇門狗，真係聽到都心酸啊！好多人都落去香港啊，又想出去外國，好幸運喎！我大媽個仔，我丈夫嘅姨媽同埋姨媽個女，可以去新西蘭喎。
Reading Mary's life story was definitely very eye-opening for me. Being able to work through all of that, the crazy move to a completely new country, new culture, and taking that in stride.
一個星期咧就由水路到達香港，就從香港搭船去到菲律賓、新幾內亞同埋澳洲雪梨。喺1940年1月23日咧，就終於到達咗新西蘭威倫頓市。
I believe that Nana paid a bond that the Chinese woman had to pay at the time, which I think was about £200, which I think in today's terms is, I don't know, a lot of money. So it was a tax that the New Zealand government put on people from China to enter New Zealand, was basically restricting the number of Chinese people coming into the country. So that made it quite a racist policy.
We live in Sages Lane. It's a tiny little lane right next to Haining Street. To get to Haining Street, I had to go down the lane and round the corner, which is very close, but when you're about 2 or 3, I thought that was a long way. I used to be babysat by our elderly neighbours, and he used to go there sometimes to play, I think it's Fantan or something, the one that you put the little green things and you tick off in black ink. Well, he used to go there. And I remember one time he took me there and was all full of these men with stinky bums. My head was at their height, bum height, and I thought, oh, this is terrible. So I looked down, and I couldn't wait to get out of that place. My father played a very small part in my life. None of us got on well with our father, really. My father was educated in the classical Chinese way. Father never said anything to us, except for at the dinner table he would rap us on the knuckles with chopsticks if we spoke in English. She never said anything bad about my father, but we knew how she felt. My father was a semi-invalid when I was young and then a total invalid when I was older. So he was just an extra person for her to look after. She was a very loving mother. There were many of us and she treated each of us in a loving way. She didn't have favourites, and because of that, We all got on well with each other. There was no rivalry or anything like that. Dad might have been out of work for a short while, and my grandmother got a fruit shop in Miramar, and so Dad went in to help. And when he took it over, Mum went to help. My elder brother Peter remembers that because he used to go up and help. I think my mother did find it challenging because she was totally illiterate and having no education at all. She was very eager to learn because she had to deal with the public in the fruit shop, so she learned the language quite well. Her social world when I was growing up was really just the fruit shop and the church. So at church she spoke Cantonese, and in the fruit shop she spoke English. The church, when I was very young, was in Frederick Street, which was one street further down from Haining Street. The Wellington Anglican Chinese Mission is what it was called. And the church was an old building. It had beautiful kauri pews. She didn't actually go to church until we were a little bit older, because I think she was too busy in the shop with the babies. I took up nursing when I was 17 because when I was 9, I had my tonsils out. I was most impressed by the cleanliness and tidiness and the efficiency of the hospital and the nurses who knew what they were doing. And I thought, this is really good, so I thought I'd take up nursing. My life up till then was very Chinese, I suppose. Dealing with the actual nursing thing, you know, body parts and seeing somebody all naked for the first time when they're not even a nice-looking shape. That was a bit of a shock, but, you know, you got used to that very quickly.
Yeah, I decided to try and get into medicine when I was around 10 years old. I had probably 2 things that led me to it. One was my teacher gave me a worksheet on red blood cells, and I decided that that sounded cool. And later on, I watched this documentary at church of missionaries working overseas in Africa, I believe, delivering free healthcare to the needy. And I was like, oh, that sounds like a really fulfilling and lovely job. And I decided I'm going to try and be a doctor. So this year I've done general medicine. I've been in a rural GP practice, which was really cool, down in Hawara. I have had the opportunity to look at some specialty surgeries like ENT and ophthalmology. Med school has really instilled a strong feeling that we need to fight for equity. Working in Hawara was definitely eye-opening, just to see the change in resources that are available, the dedication of the doctors who work rurally to make sure that everything is done as well by the patients as possible. I feel very privileged to have been placed in an area where we have the opportunity to work with a lot of Maori and Pacifica patients, as well as work in a rural community.
My mother was very focused on who marries who, even within the Chinese community, because we all came from different villages. And if you came from another village, well, yeah, that was sort of a bit of an eye-opener. So I was Ponyu, and if you came from the county of Jiangxiang, which is not that far away, that was still, you know, you raised your eyes a bit, because we all knew that if we married or even looked at a boy who was a Kiwi, well, that was a real no-no anyway. But that was when I was younger. By the time I was a bit older and getting married, I think people were accepting that you were okay if you married someone who was Chinese. Nowadays, of course, they're happy for you to marry anybody.
So I grew up thinking that it was expected of me to marry an Asian person. It wasn't said outright too often. But yeah, I believe that there was that expectation. So yes, I did marry someone of Asian descent, yes.
When Dad first brought Mum home, Mum really wanted to emphasize to me that Mary was completely accepting, even though in the past she had talked to Dad about having a Chinese girlfriend. When he brought Mum home, she welcomed her with open arms and was always so kind to her, didn't want to make her feel left out.
Growing up in Auckland in the 70s and 80s was, like, looking back on it now, it's completely different. Like, my primary school had 2 Asian people in it, myself and my brother. In primary school, they used to say things like Ching Chong Chinaman, you know, that horrible old rhyme, and just make fun of my surname, you know, Wong. Oh, I've winged the Wong number. We used to get a lot of those sorts of phone calls back when there were phone books. I think we've got it very good here, generally, in New Zealand. We have a lot of challenges, but I like to stay optimistic. Yeah, and see the good things, and hopefully we'll all work to better the country for everybody.
I was born in New Zealand in 2000, and soon after, about 6 months after I was born, Mum and Dad decided to move to Canada. Dad had a job opportunity there, which was very exciting. So moved over there, planning to only stay for 2 years, but ended up staying for 10. It was a lovely time there. Grew up in a close-knit community just out of Vancouver, a place called Delta. But I definitely didn't have much of a connection with my Chinese side, which I was always acutely aware of, just in the fact that, you know, you look at everyone else and you look at yourself and you realize that you're not quite the same. And I feel initially I tried really hard to fit in with one group or the other and realized that I couldn't quite do that. And it was really moving to New Zealand that helped me embrace my halfness, or being both Chinese and Caucasian. Moving back here, suddenly massive families here, both, or pretty big families on Mom and Dad's side. You know, Christmas, Easter, all of the holidays, suddenly they were family things again, which was really nice.
My memories of her are really good. Like, she was such a loving nana, so calm and positive to everybody. You know, I just find it hard to reconcile, you know, what happened in her past with how I remember her. I think it's important to remember the stories of our elders, like my nana, just to remind us, you know, where we're from, and that, you know, they sacrificed a lot for us to be here.
Looking back on my own life, I think I'm very lucky. If it wasn't for the fact that Mum came over here, I wouldn't be here. Or if the government didn't allow the refugee children to stay, I would have had to go back to China. And who knows, might not be here today.
There's war in the air, our cupboards are bare. The time has come, the time that I fear. Daughter, sweet daughter, you must
非常感謝 New Zealand On Air 嘅幫助。